without the vaccine being available, there is some worry about going back to work. Do you think that companies should allow work from home any longer? That's kind of a two-pronged question.
Well, I can talk about the time management question first. The other question is a little bit more uh, difficult to answer, but for time management, time is important. Time really means structuring realistic accomplishments, realistic expectations, with building in a little bit of room for variance. As a statistician, you would call that error variance or standard deviation. There's what you want to get accomplished, but part of what happens with time management is when you can control the environment and you control everything, then you're more efficient in terms of time management. But there are variables with just learning how to manage. So expect more variance, but rather than focus on time, focus on realistic tasks that you want to complete with times, even though you're working from home, for rest and relaxation breaks. Because if you're at home, you still need that. A lot of people tend to keep pushing themselves because they're at home and the environment may be a little bit more comfortable and relaxing, but you still need that rejuvenation time. And you need structure, but you need structure that also involves the expectation that because you're not in a controlled environment, mistakes may happen, things may not go right. You might lose the internet. There might be a knock on the door or a siren going off that distracts you a little bit. Again, these are all part of that. And if you become solely focused on time management, as if you control all of the stimulation in your environment, you could be very frustrated.
Yeah, and I could just add, for individuals who are working from home, who are also caring for younger children, who may need minute-to-minute supervision, or may have to, they may need some instructional supervision, or they're hungry. I'm just finding a lot of the times when I'm in these meetings, people are constantly apologizing for interruptions when they care for their children. And I just keep reminding them I'm a pediatrician. I would be worried if you didn't take care of your children. So I think we have to recognize that there's only a fixed amount of time during the day, and there will be interruptions during your daily schedule, during working hours, because of the other responsibilities that you have. And I think that leads some people to say, well, when my kids finally go to sleep, or when I have a spouse who's done with their work from home, they can take over, and I'll then compensate by working in the evening and working in the weekends. That starts to make you feel like you're working nonstop because you are working nonstop. So there's a certain amount where, yes, I agree with all the advice Tom gave about managing your time, but you also have to realize you have a finite amount of time. We all have 24 hours during the day, and we are not going to be able to do everything during that time. And reducing your sleep, even on the short term, is not a good solution. So you will have to prioritize. The only other thing I would say about prioritizing, particularly for people who are successful in business, is they tend to make lists mentally or physically. They prioritize and they go from the top. But the bottom line is, when you don't have enough time and there's a lot of stress, you'll never get through the entire list. So you have to prioritize, but you have to eliminate some of the things at the bottom of the list. And perhaps most importantly, occasionally you have to go out of order. Because if you only do the top priorities and there's too much on the list, you're not going to find time for a lot of the things that your children need, very little time for what your spouse or partner needs, and virtually no time for what you need. And so you have to go out of order sometimes to do things that are important to your self-care, as well as also important to your children and other adults in the family, because otherwise it's going to feel like an endless amount of work that you will never get through.
The other portion of the question, though, is I just want to make sure we address it, and that's worrying about return to work, worrying about what's going to happen. And we hear that a lot. Everybody's thinking about it. But as we don't know what is evolving, and we have to be adaptable and flexible and manage our stress in the day to day, by doing that, if we have the confidence that whatever is thrown at us or whatever decisions we make based on what is presented at that time, we'll handle it in our best way. I think that's a more prudent way to think about things. To try to make decisions about what may happen in a month or a week or 2 months will get you consumed by worry, which will add to your stress. But by dealing with your stress on a day to day and building your self confidence in your ability and confidence that you've shown resiliency, you've met challenges, and having that boost in terms of strong you are in terms of resiliency will help you face whatever challenge the future may make and give you.
And I'll also add, because I read the question in the chat box while you were talking, Tom, that part of that question also related to having an underlying medical condition that might place this individual at increased risk of being seriously ill from catching the virus, and a question about whether or not work could accommodate that. And while neither Tom or I work for New York Life insurance company, what I can say is that my advice would be to share your concerns directly with your supervisor to the extent that you feel comfortable, and or also speak to HR for some reason you don't feel you can share that. And I would share concerns about both your physical health condition and also if you have a mental health condition that makes it more difficult for you, like say underlying anxiety or depression. I think in most situations, employers will find ways to try and accommodate actual needs of their employees in terms of modifying their working conditions to find a good compromise. So while I can't speak to exactly what that might be in the company and how much distance work will still be going on at different points in the recovery process, I do think the best strategy is to start a conversation with your supervisor, because they probably don't know what your needs are unless you tell them.
Thank you, David. And yes, I definitely agree.